Hello, everyone. So, I've been thinking about this for a while. Nihon Falcom has confirmed that they plan to hopefully finish the Trail series by the 2030s. Now, they recently just released Kai no Koseki, like today, actually. I mean, people got it early yesterday if you pre-ordered the game, but the game comes out to general audiences today in Japan. Anyways, and we know that it's going to be the last game in the Calvin arc, and that the series will be 90% complete after it. If I had to guess, we probably have three more games left, a duology, and then one final big entry. Now, once the Trail series is done, that leads to the question about the future of Falcon, since, well, if you look at Falcon's games, if you look at, if you look at the games they've been releasing, like, the Trail series, other than, like, the occasional Ease game, it's just been trails, like, trails, no trails, trails, no trails, no trails. It's gonna be a trails game every year, nearly every year for them. Now they do have seem to be having a solution. Like they announced, like it was announced that the first Sky game will be getting a remake in 2025, which we saw in the direct. So this looks like to be the future. Like at the moment, they said they're only remaking the first Sky game, but let's be honest, they are definitely remaking the second game. I don't believe them for a second when they said, "Oh, we're just doing the first game. We might do the second game if the first one sells well." No, like the first game, this remake is probably almost done, knowing that they're probably going to release it probably like in September next year. So it's probably nearly complete. They're probably just doing bug fixing right now, which means most likely the second Sky game is probably in pre-production right now and will probably enter full-scale production like at the latest mid next year, so it can come out the year afterwards. Because I feel like there will be a sequel for the Trails in the Sky remake. Whether or not they remake the third game, I don't know. Because to my knowledge, Trails in the third is kind of its own separate thing from the first two games. Like it's related, of course, but like it's more or less it's kind of less like a epilogue to the main plot of the first two games. Now, to my general guessing with Falcon's future of timelines of release games, we know that the Sky remake, is coming out next year, and that general during the general timeline of Trails games, as we see here, Reveille came out in 2020, while the new Daybreak title came out in 2021. I don't think we will get another a mainline title next year. Generally speaking, there's usually a 2 year gap between Trails games. We can see here from Tales of Ash to the Cold Steel that there was a 2 year gap, and the same thing happened between Cold Steel 2 and Trails of Reveille, even though Reveille was kind of but not Reveille shit. No, it was a 2 year gap. Not that was actually a 4 year gap. Like one, two, three. You know what I mean? It was usually a major gap. That won't be the case. Like with like Daybreak, when they were working with the engine, they were probably developing Daybreak as they were making the engine. So if I had to guess for how much work they put into Kai no Koseki, which uses a lot of assets from Daybreak games, most likely we won't see another Turtles mainline game for 2 years. So probably 2027 at the latest. That's not 2027. That's just you know what I mean. Oh, come on. So yeah. Now, as we continue into Falcon's future, we also can take a look at the other releases. If we go back to the title releases, specifically about the E series, Falcon released E's 10 Nordics in 2023, and generally speaking, there's usually a 3 year gap. As you can see, the Memories of South Seta came out in 2012 with their next title in 2016, and then the number in 2019. So usually there's around like a 3 to 4 year maximum gap between titles. Because of this, I believe that we will get a new Ease game in 2026. Most likely be an Ease 5 remake. Falcon have constantly stated that they wanted to remake Ease 5. It is considered. Oh, that's Ease 6. Oops. Here we go. It is considered the worst game in the franchise, and they definitely said they would like to fix it. So I believe that, yeah, we will get a remake of 5 in 2026, and we'll probably get, at the earliest, of Ease 11 in 2029. Though I feel like that might not happen because of the Trail series. I mean, they said they want to do 2 titles a year now, but I don't know how. I don't think it's going to be an every year thing. I doubt they have the manpower and resources to do that. Now, when they. So yeah, oh yeah, I'm stumbling. Now, the thing I really want to talk about is that I think the future of, like, once we're done with Trails, like, you know, They're gonna release a new Trails game around 2027, and then another one in 2028, and then the final game will probably come out in 2030 or 2031 at the latest. There possibly could be a duology. It could be two duologies. So the Trails series will be done by 2031 at the latest. Now, with the Sky remake coming on 2025, we'll probably get the second one in 2026 or 2027 at the latest. They might do a crossbow remake, but other than that, I think the Trail series will be done. I believe the main goal of Falcon now is that they want to set up Tokyo Xanadu as their next big franchise. If you look at Falcon's history, like, here we go. The original Xanadu that came out all the way back in 1985 is, like, probably the most important game in the company's history, at least in its early history. It sold 400,000 copies, which is fantastic in the mid 80s. Like, that is seriously huge numbers. And it's definitely considered like a very influential RPG, early RPG. And but since then, they really haven't done a lot with the Xanadu IP. If you look at the release schedule, they mostly do a Xanadu game like every 5 years. Like they did looks like they did one in 1994. They might have done okay. There was a Legend of Xanadu in 1994. So yeah, I mean they did consistently did Xanadus a bit, but if you go further upwards, you see they released Xanadu next all the way back in 2005, and then it took them an entire decade to get Tokyo Xanadu out in 2015. And only last year did they announce they were doing a new Tokyo Xanadu game, which will most likely come out in 2025. Because if you look at the last two titles, it's been like a decade thing. Like they like make a Xanadu game once a decade when they have the time. I believe since like as someone who's played the Tokyo Xanadu, they were definitely setting that game up to be a beginning of like a new franchise or like at least a trilogy like at minimum. So I believe they will definitely massively try to expand the Xanadu franchise, at least of the Tokyo sub series of it, as like the next trail series. There's definitely a lot of similarities. I can think could work about it, considering the fact that Tokyo Xanadu was kind of a mixture of, kind of was very much Trails related. Like when they were developing the game, they said that the goal was to make it like a mixture of ease with combat, while adding in Trails elements such as a similar art system and the high school setting that we saw in the Cold Steel games, which were the big Trails games at the time. Not sure if they're going to continue the full school route, but they will definitely continue with the modernization route because the Trail series is technologically is definitely more of a based on a modern setting. Like there's not a lot of RPGs that are set at least in a modern setting, at least in a way like in Tokyo Xanadu. Like when we see RPGs, they're usually set in fantasy, maybe space, and when they do modern games, there are quite a few games that do modern settings, but they're very low budget. So there's very few like massive RPGs that like do modern setting. And I know Falcon isn't massive, but compared to other not indie, small RPG developers, their games are definitely the highest budget and quality. And the Trail series is generally a modern setting, so the Tokyo Xanadu games will fit well with fans of this Trail series because, like, again, modern setting, Tokyo Xanadu, it was in a setting of the school similar to that of the Trails games at the time, which means that whenever the next Tokyo Xanadu game is, I don't think it'll be set in a school setting. Maybe. It could be, but I feel like it will be more the vibes of the Daybreak games. Since Falcon likes to keep I think Falcon wants to make, Xanadu games into the next Trails. So, when we see the next Xanadu game in 2025, I believe we'll see a new Xanadu game in 2027 or 2028. And by the time the Trail series is done, I feel like Xanadu will become a nearly yearly franchise like Trails. Like they will take a year off or two for an Ease game or maybe for another IP they want to do, but it will mostly be Xanadu games. And this is like incredibly good for like Falcon from their business perspective, because like Falcon, they said they wanted to do like 2 games a year, and they've been consistently doing 1 game a year for a while now. And the way they've been able to do this is by constantly reusing assets between titles. And they've been able to get away with this because the Trail series is a heavily story-oriented series where, like, the new point of the game is to see where the story is going. It's not really about, a whole new experience. It's about a continuation of a continuous experience. And that allowed them to excuse making games with massively used assets. So, so I believe that's something they plan. And another reason I truly do believe this, if we consider like in an interview when like Kondo was talking about the Ease and Trails in the Sky crossover game, he talked about how the game was developed in 7 months and stated how he wished they could go back to those days where they can develop smaller games like this quickly. Like a decade ago, yeah, you could develop small games like this from experienced studios in like a year or two, and like if you really have good user assets, yeah, you could do this in a couple of months. Like this was pretty easy. This was a complete package that they complete in 7 months. But if we look at today, like Trails of Daybreak 2, this game was developed in around 8 months, and it shows. Like they were able to make sure it didn't have any major game breaking bugs or anything like that. Like it's a quality wise, it's a good title, but you can tell by how they did the story of the game that it was rushed. So they really can't afford to do, a less than a year title, even for these heavily reused assets games. But which is why I believe they have to make, if they want to continue this yearly schedule, they need to make the Tokyo Xanadu games into the Trails next Trail series. It makes sense. They're similar enough to the Trails games in setting and in settings. They have some similar combat styles, and there's high potential for reusing of assets, which allows for maintaining quick development times and to constantly keep the schedule on track. So, yeah, that's gonna be my predictions in the future of Falcon. I apologize for the rambling, some of the rambling there. Not the best speaker in the world. I'm sorry. Probably should roll the script before it's recording. I had this entire speech planned out in my head like an hour ago, and I was like sitting there reciting it to myself. I'm stupid. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. Not episode. And today's whatever. Jesus. Well, goodbye, folks.